You are about to listen to a discussion on how to actually live out your faith in Christ, living it out loud within our messy and busy lives. The content of this discussion comes from our Wednesday night crew, pastoral preaching notes, and the live small group discussions these notes prompted, something we like to call a community-based learning experience. Come now, chew on this with us.
Have you ever seen something just so amazing that you just can't stand it? I mean, it's like, oh, I have to tell somebody. And you go get someone and you show it to them and you just, and they stand there and they don't do anything. This is Pastor Orlene Hasseltine, along with Pastor Robin Bjornson and Otto Steve Lundy, welcoming you to this podcast. I was going to call it an event. It's feeling like an event because it's been eventish this morning to this podcast. When Jesus speaks, Lazarus, more signs from the Gospel of John. The content of this discussion was discussed in our small group on July 29th, on a Wednesday night. And it was a nice, lively, masked, spread out, socially distanced conversation of trying to figure out, as we have been plopping through the Gospel of John, looking at these signs, because the Gospel of John doesn't use the word miracles at all when he talks about what Jesus has done. It's definitively this word. These are the signs, and that changes how you look at these events, these miraculous, these amazing things. John has a point, and he wants us to really, really get it. All of the sermon notes from this week's podcast are posted on our website, realchurch.org/Wednesday night. And they are there for you to go peruse and play with. And if you don't like how they're formatted, I can't help it. That's what my brain does. So that's what I tell my husband anyway when he wants to look at my notes. So you might have that same reaction. But that's okay, because you'd be in good company with my spouse. So I would like to begin by a way of reminder, like we did last night, looking at there are 6, we'll start with this conversation. There's just so much to cover. I knew last night was going to be filled with information because it's John chapter 11 and all about Lazarus, and it's the only place it's listed and blah, 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 and all of that. So I knew it was going to take us a long time. And we didn't do 2 different miracles, looking at 2 different signs, 2 different things. We just looked at this one because this is like the pinnacle tipping point, if you will. This is where everything starts to change and move into the death, burial, and resurrection timeline, the completion of Jesus' life here on earth timeline. This is the over point. So knowing we were going to be building, and I wanted to make sure we had all the connectors in the Gospel of John about the signs, because John specifically lists 6 signs that are not listed in any other gospel. And so we have been looking at them. Tonight we're looking at number 5. We began with number 1, which was the wedding at Cana, which was an amazing, oh my goodness, Jesus and his community. And the point that we discussed, that we believe John was after, the thing he wanted people to remember about Jesus' divinity and about Jesus' character and what he wanted the individuals who heard that letter being read to know, and us here in our day and time to know, that Jesus transforms. He doesn't just fix, he doesn't whatever. He takes water and turns it to something absolutely different. He turns it into wine. So Jesus transforms. That is, we believe, the main point of the wedding at Cana. Why that sign was listed, because it's pointing to something in Jesus' divine character. Then we come about Jesus healing the nobleman's son, which is an interesting story, and all of the background information about society at that time. That's a wonderful lesson as well. But that's not the point. The point is that Jesus' words are the very power of God. However you want to phrase that, his words and the power of God are one. And that point is so blatant in that sign that that one was really easy to get. That one was just right there in our face. And it's like, it echoes in your head after you go through it and you look at it and you figure out this is the point of what John was talking about. That just echoes. His words are the power of God. So when I read his words, it's God's power I'm reading. When I trust his words, it's God's power I'm trusting. Yes, taking Jesus at his word, yeah, that's what John is all about with that one. And then we come to the miracle at Bethesda, the unbelieving invalid that Jesus heals there. That one was a little bit harder for us to come up with a summation, a group summation of where we think it was going. And I invite you to go read about that sign and get all the information, because the individual didn't know who Jesus was, and Jesus heals him. And so John puts this in here. What is this saying about Jesus' character? What is this talking about his divinity? And I thought, and I'm putting mine in there, but there was other discussion. I'll let you know what some of the other things, that Jesus can bestow grace on anyone he chooses. Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. He's the Lord over the laws of the society. That Jesus has power over hopelessness, because this individual was 38 years an invalid. All of those being amazing. And I was going with, there was a thought line on Jesus being the master of time. It doesn't matter what all happens in our background. When we meet Jesus, he's the master of everything that's happened in our past. So that has some soteriological connection, some salvation connection with that mindset. But I'm going with that Jesus and the Father are one, because he says that so much in this story, in this sign that happened here at Bethesda. So, okay, he says that over. Well, he says that over in almost all of these except the wedding at Cana, but this idea of we are one. And then last week we talked about Jesus heals a man born blind. And that is like an upside down. You can tell he's right at the pinnacle of jumping over here with Lazarus, which we'll be talking about in this podcast, that no one, no prophet, no one in any of their history has ever healed anyone who was born blind. A blind person who became blind after they were born with functioning eyeballs, maybe, but one who was born with no functioning eyeballs, that never had happened. Because to create new eyeballs and all the systems in your head for those eyeballs to work, you have to be a creator. So I'm wondering, is John wanting us to connect Jesus with Genesis as being a part of the Trinity and a creator? So is that part of what he was after? And we had more conversation on trying to define what is the main point. What is he saying, the specific point about Jesus' divinity? I went with the word restoration as it's connected into salvation and the whole topic of soteriology, that this is who Jesus is. He saves, he restores, not just physically, but also spiritually, that is what he's here for. And as you read through the sign yourself, you can look for all the characteristics of the divine, of Jesus as God. And what is John wanting us to see? Because this is Twitter back then. This is their billboard. This is their Instagram photo. John is being very specific in what he lists because he wants us to remember these things. Keeping in mind that John was asked by the Christian community to please write a companion gospel, if you will, with the synoptic ones, with Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that they needed something that addressed the things that weren't addressed in those three. And he had already written the book of Revelation, so he had to be, older into the Christian church and his memory and connecting. And so he wrote the Gospel of John to communicate with us. This is more. This is understanding more of who Jesus is. Let us see what happened while he was here on this planet, because it points to his character that we here and now can trust in. And so he wrote this, and these things are very specific. And what's amazing for us, it is scripture, yep, all of that stuff, but even more so, this comes from the heart of Jesus's, in my opinion, very best friend here on the planet when he was here. That John the Revelator and him had a relationship that was just really unique as far as completing each other's sentences would be how I would describe it, I think. And John took to his grave things that we'll never know until we meet Jesus face to face. I mean, you can tell by this gospel that there is an understanding and maybe proximity, that he was in places, and it appears he was a quieter individual. He wasn't like Peter. I think he was the companion piece to Peter as well. Peter, who was like, do first, think later, who we love and respect. And just so you know, teaser starting this fall at Wednesday, in the Wednesday night crew, we are going to be examining the life of Peter and who he was to Jesus and examining his writing. So that'll be a wonderful fall into who knows how long it will take us, taking a look at the disciple of Peter, looking forward to that as well. And I believe John is like a completion of the friend conglomerate. He just had a very different personality, in my opinion. And so I believe he took to his grave things that we won't know, like I said, until we meet Jesus face to face. And so as I'm reading through and looking at these signs, getting this feeling, there are extremely specific reasons why this is there. And that delights me and bothers me at the same time. And so here we have those first 4 signs as we begin looking at the 5th sign. Now, by way of reminder, when John uses the phrase the Jews, he's talking about the Pharisees and the religious leaders 99% of the time. So when you're reading it through, keep in mind, is it that specific group of people he is talking about and referring to? Because we're going to see the amazing things that Jesus does and how you want to respond, and then we're going to see the people that look at it and just do not respond that way. So asking yourself, who are they? What are they? And that will help you understand what is actually happening in the situation John is describing. Also, in John 1:14, the very beginning of the gospel, we need to keep in mind that this is what John is saying. He's saying, and the word, capital W, helping you see this. I'm letting you know, good prepositional phrase. I'm going to tell you this is what this gospel is about. I'm going to help you see the word becoming flesh and living amongst us. And that gives us this amazing setup for these signs that he lists later as Jesus begins his public ministry. And then John 2. This is why he's sharing this stuff. It is to increase our faith, help us understand Jesus, and know how to have a relationship with him here on this planet while we are waiting to see him face to face. Now, to define the word signs, I was looking for extra notes last night, and I found them somewhere, but I didn't go back and look and post them in a new place inside these notes. So I'm just going to tell you what I remember as I was doing the research. He's not using the word miracle on purpose, because a miracle is used in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And it's a different word, it looks different, all of that stuff. So when John specifically uses this phrase, this is what he is trying to define. It would be a special action by Jesus which reveals his glory to those who believe, which confront others with the need to decide about Jesus. So he is using an action that to those who love Jesus, oh, yes, Jesus, yes, but those who don't get it, don't know Jesus yet, and don't really understand, it's going to be a pecking woodpecker inside their head. How in the world can that guy do that? By whose power does it do that? Are all those people standing around there being, ooh, is he some great magician like David Blake? Is he just some kind of illusionist? Or is he blah, 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 blah? And those individuals will have this woodpecker of that sign pecking in their brain for the rest of their life, demanding that they make a decision about who Jesus is. That, for the quiet individual in my head that I have John pegged as, that person, when I read that, it's like, oh, he may be quiet, but he's not afraid of conflict. This guy wants you, hey, this is truth. You deal with truth. I'm giving you truth. It's your job to deal with it. I'm sorry if you don't like it. I'm sorry if it gets your undies in a wad. It is truth, and you need to. This is who Jesus is. He's the embodiment of truth, and so it's going to poke at you. It's going to drive you a bit batty. But in the process, we're going to encounter Creator God. We're going to encounter the person who is so in love with humanity that he paid this huge price that will be coming up later in the gospel. Now, John 20, in the end of the gospel, he tells us the reason why he wrote this. And that's also important to look at as we are here getting near the end of Jesus' earthly life. And it actually has as a subtitle, not in the actual letter, but the purpose of this book. by believing in him, you might have life in his name. So using those as our guidelines and our directional target, here we go, looking at John chapter 11. I'm hoping that you, our listening audience or our viewing audience, have a Bible near, although the scripture verses will be going up for those of you that are watching us. They'll be posted, and yes, I cram as much as I can into one slide, one picture, one frame, one capture, because it just belongs there.
I think that one slide was almost going down to the floor. It was
It was
there was a lot
dragging its
there.
tail, and it's like, I'm not sure, Otto, if it's age or whatever, but it comes from, I believe, being an incessant reader since I was able to read as a little kid, reading everything. I remember the delight at going into the library in first grade at school. It's like, ooh, look, these are all here for me. And I'm used to capturing in my head that this is the chunk. I don't want to turn the page. Maybe that's what it is. What is it? Because I know all of the different
Genres?
applications or whatever where you can get scripture verses organized for you, and you just type in what you want and they come up. Those are bite-sized. Those are fun-sized pieces of scripture that come, and I understand why. It's so much easier to inhale and adjust and to eat and to digest that piece by piece. And so I'm just letting you know, I realize that. And I apologize. I apologize on Wednesday night every time I do it, which is weekly. But here it is. Here is this section of scripture. So I'm going to do my best reading it here for those who will be listening and they won't see me. But for those of you who are watching, you're going to see the screen. Resurrection and the life. Then we're going to look at this concept of Jesus weeping. And then after those first three segments, Jesus raising Lazarus, and then what happens after that. So let us begin. John chapter 11. Than that. Let us begin. John chapter. Walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. After saying these things, he said to them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he's fallen asleep, he's going to recover." Now Jesus had spoken of his death, but they thought that he meant taking a rest and sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus has died, and for your sake, I am glad that I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." So Thomas, called the twin, who we like to give the nickname Doubting Thomas for his questions after Jesus' resurrection, that same disciple here says to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." So there is the opening portion of the sign that John is talking about, Jesus and his disciples. So I thought it was interesting to bring up the question, not that we had time to talk about it, but just all of these things that you meditate on when you're thinking through this story. So this is the beginning of it. So here we're seeing Jesus' love and his connection with the disciples. And somewhere they believe it was about the last year of his life on this planet. He spent specifically, mainly, with his disciples away from large crowds, teaching and training and loving and just being with. The ministry of hanging around and how you can teach through hanging around. So looking and examining these verses, I can ask you guys, do you see any signs of closeness, any signs of intimacy, any signs of community bonding in those 16 verses?
You mean between the disciples and Jesus? Or?
Yeah, Jesus and his groupies.
Well, it's not many people I'm going to say, okay, we're going to go with you so that we can die with you. It's like,
Are you being dramatic?
yeah, yeah, I guess he was there a little.
You know?
Fine, we'll go and we'll die.
Well, I'm thinking they've seen some vitriol that they had not seen before.
Yeah.
Watching the rulers and those who were just so incensed and angry, being also stirred up by the enemy, that there's supernatural evil happening here over and an abundant, of course. And so I don't think, yeah, Thomas could be, because looking at some of his other behavior, but he could have just what everybody else is thinking, he says out loud.
Yeah, he seems to be the Captain Obvious in the group, you know, because later he's like, you know, let me put my finger in the hole of Jesus, you know, so he is a real experiential learner, and he seems to be just, you know, stating the truth, because really it could cost them their lives to do this.
Well, I'm sorry, well, he's making a declaration. I will die with you.
Exactly.
I mean, that's, wow.
The other thing that strikes me, Pastor O, is how Jesus just very plainly states,
Yes.
Lazarus is dead. And so he recognizes that whatever maybe subtlety was being used in his language before that wasn't being effective to actually communicate what needed to be communicated. And he just got super plain. And I love that, because for me, he could have just left them in that misunderstanding, but he didn't. He made it plain. So.
Well, you think after they've been together probably at least 3 years, that he still has to come out and explain it just point blank. Lazarus is dead. Come on, guys. Listen to me. Understand the words I've been saying for these years.
It makes me wonder, too, because it says he got the news that Lazarus was dead, and he waited 2 days. So I wondered, did the other guys get that news when Jesus got that news? So their understanding of the significance of the timing and all that kind of stuff, you know, that playing into it, who knows? I don't know.
Interesting how and there's the obvious the bonding between the Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. That's interesting how he uses the term here, Lord, he whom you love is ill. It's strange that John would write that when, hey, I'm the one you love here, pal. It's a...
Human nature tells us that, of course, that's part of, but that's a response I don't have to pay attention to. Even though I'm feeling it doesn't mean it's true, which I'm sure Jesus helped them understand that your feelings are at the caboose of your life, at the back of your life. Feelings are an amazing gift, but just because we feel something doesn't make it true. It means we're responding to something. Yeah. And so him helping them see, I love deeply, and then specifically this crew, what it helps us understand is that the disciples were his heartbeat, and Mary, Martha, and Lazarus was part of that heartbeat. They were part in there, that he had the 12 that he was dumping his life into with the expectation that we would inherit what they knew. He knew what he was doing. network, but Mary, Martha, and Lazarus were part of that network as well, supporting in a different place, providing what was humanly needed as well as supernaturally needed, as we're going to see in this interchange in Lazarus' life.
Well, Pastor O, wouldn't it be, it just strike me as you're talking, wouldn't it be appropriate, given the mission that Jesus has and his love for people, he is definitely pouring out to this group of guys, but this is a real life example of why I have come and what I can do. Let's go do ministry. So there might have been discussion about theory. Here is a
Yes.
practical application of where we're going to go and do the work.
Yes. Yes.
It really doesn't explain what they were doing at the time he got the message, that he still going to hang around 2 more days. They're doing...
Yes, we're going to find out the answer to that question as we go along.
Okay.
And they were removing themselves from public. And the two things I can think of, one, it wasn't time yet for
Right.
him to be arrested. How much did Jesus know? How much did he specifically know? How much was he told? Because there's all those creepy, fun, amazing, supernatural things that happened prior to this. When the Mount of Transfiguration, what was explained to him there? How much did he know about this timeline? He knew when he started with the wedding at Cana, he was going to be starting his life 3-year. I don't know if he knew it was 3 years, but timeline meant something. And this is a great encouragement to my heart, because right now with all that's going on with these things and people having their life upside down and not everybody is handling it as just this isn't a moral issue. This is just civil, yay, doing our job, being part of the communities in which we live and loving others. And agree or disagree, this is what has been asked of us here in Minnesota. So this is something that we can figure, it's just like wearing your hair in a ponytail too long and you get that funny headache. Right, Steve?
Absolutely.
Well, it reminds me very much of if I worked in a restaurant, I'd be pulling my hair back and putting a hairnet on, or if I had a lovely beard, I'd be wearing a beard net.
Yes.
It's just what we do.
I'm out in the interstate. This car can go a lot faster than 70 miles an hour. I'm going to go fast. Well, no, I guess
To
not.
my spouse. Yes, he talks that way all the time. You two should not hang out together by yourselves. Well, how fast you can go, I don't know.
It's just the rules we have to abide by now.
And, okay, I went there talking about
Jesus timeline.
Jesus' timeline. So, eschatology, the timeline of the end things. It's interesting because the writer of the Gospel of John just completed earlier the book of Revelation. That experience of being cast there, and he just wouldn't die, so they bring him back. But while he was there, he had this unbelievable revelation that he wrote. And in the book of Revelation, there's a few things that are definitive, but most of it tells you to watch and wait. Well, guess who owns the watch and wait? Jesus owns that timeline. It seems to be something he's really good at. So when I read and see that there's a timeline here, and I'm wondering if he's hesitating, this is where that thought comes from. I know he owns the timeline of the end times. He owns all those chunks of things that we know that happen. They happen somewhere here in this process. We know God the Father is the one who owns he owns the wedding at Cana experience that starts that timeline. Nobody else knows when that begins. No, and Scripture is very definitive about that. God the Father is the only one who knows when that thing switches. But Jesus holds that. So here I can see him, in my opinion, he has an understanding of, did he know specifically Lazarus and this is what he was supposed to do? Well, we definitely know he knew something by the way he talks and by him waiting and by all of these specifics. So it's just freaky and wonderful and intriguing looking at how he loves others. And love isn't this mushy, do whatever you want, make you feel good type of thing. Love is a great big cup of grow up juice. You have to understand truth. But we're going to do this together, and I'm not going to leave you alone. Life is hard, and I'm going to help you understand how to live hard and keeping your supernatural self full so you can walk this blessing of a life together. So I love that he's, all right, boys and girls, here we go. This is what life on this planet looks like. But what's amazing as you live this gift that you've been given, you're going to be able to have relationship with me. You're going to be able to experience the power of the Holy Spirit, giving you this taste of what it's going to be like in eternity. And that should just, motivate us to share this truth with everyone we know, that you are a supernatural spiritual being having a very temporary physical experience. And Jesus is showing that and is highlighted in this sign of Lazarus. So here we go. They had this. They pack up the camels. I don't think they did have camels. Okay, Jesus took the time to clarify. I'm just going through the bullet points, making sure we covered them. Jesus says, let us go to him in present tense, not corpse tense, not death tense. So he's using an alive phraseology when he talks about Lazarus. That crazy reason of waiting, we're going to find out why. And they were about 20 miles away from Bethany, which the place of Bethany is about 2 miles away from Jerusalem, I believe. So here we go. Verse 17, back in John 11. 17 through 27. It's weird to read this much scripture here in the podcast, but here we go, because this is what we used. This is what I decided to use to move the story along so we could eat it piece by piece. Responded, I am the resurrection and the life. And he paused right there. And then he went on and said, whoever believes in me, though he die, yet he shall live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this, Martha? She said to him, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world. So there was some theology teaching, some theory, there was bonding. There was this lovely, I love you, Martha. You and I have had lots of conversations, Martha. I love your brain. I love how you want to love others. I love how you do. And now I'm going to ask you, can you believe this? You know me well enough because you are my disciple. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, I believe, is part of this disciple foundation of his world. So here, we have the specific listing of 4 days. There's this 4-day pause, if you will. Very, very specific because it's brought up throughout the entire chapter. Steve, if you've never had one of those, they're keep your throat happy, but they're spicy. Lots of cinnamon, lots of...
I want a spicy meatball.
Yes, yeah, we call them Jesus drops as we hang around
Jesus
the
drop,
office.
well,
Yeah,
thank
we
you.
do, because they seem to... Last night, lots of talking. My throat gets really tight, and we're recording these now the next morning of, which is great. But you can tell, we all talk a lot on Wednesday nights, so keep that lovely throat liquidized. So if you hear this, it's us doing stuff with Jesus drops. It's actually, that's not their name, but that's what we call them. Ooh, I see
Whoa.
Jesus.
We see Jesus taking a lozenge. Yeah.
There you go. Mm-hmm. So here are some of the things that I found in commentaries talking about this 4-day wait. There is a common understanding that if, remember, they don't have machines that can tell them if individuals are here or there, not like we have today. So they would put them in the tomb, they would remove them because they understood, if you read back in Leviticus and in the time of Moses, all these rules of taking care of things, they were rules to keep your community healthy and safe. They were a way to live in society where you could control disease and keep things clean. And I mean, it's crazy how specific some of the things are. In my devotions, I'm going through some of that right now in Leviticus, and it's like, it's so specific. It's specified this and this and this. Gives me a little bit of a headache. I need a checklist. Let's just take all this up, make a checklist with little boxes, and I can go through, well, I'm not going to eat anything that crawls around like that. Oh, mouse, nope, mouse ain't on the menu tonight, that type of stuff. But so that mindset shows up here in this idea that it was a common understanding, according to the commentaries, that for 3 days you would go back every day and check and see if the individual in the tomb was in a coma or if something else had happened that you haven't noticed. You would give them time, and after that, on day 4, they were considered deceased because the body would start to decay. And so you would know that there isn't any residual movement or fluids or anything like that. So that was one section. I read it in a few different places. But then there's another one in my favorite, The Bible Speaks Today by InterVarsity Press. They say that there's this rabbinic evidence for a Jewish belief. For 3 days after death, the soul of the deceased person would hover around the body, seeking re-entry. And on the 4th day, when it sees that the color of the face is disintegrating or changing, decomposing, then it goes and it leaves and goes to Abraham's bosom. So there is this idea that waiting 4 days would teach everyone who's around there the sign John is trying to get us to realize. So Jesus was specifically setting it up so they would learn something that then his death, burial, and resurrection would bring it all together. So it's very specific that it has to be after this mindset. It couldn't be he never really was dead. So there has to be this understanding in everyone's, and that's where my heart breaks for Mary and Martha. Day 1, they go check. Day 2, they go check. And hope is beginning to disappear. Most of us understand this, walking someone to the end of their life or caring in this whole process of grief. Day 3, they go check, and then the mourning really shifts. That day on day 4, things had shifted. So it was like fresh. Jesus is walking into the real mourning and the grieving, the freshness of this. And then there was another statement in that commentary about the greater the challenge, the greater the miracle. Jesus is specific for this sign, making sure it's understood. So that 3 days of waiting and doing it on the 4th day was very, very specified in that culture so that they would understand exactly what Jesus was saying about who he was. And then we notice that there's a lot of people supporting Mary and Martha. They are well known in the community. Apparently, they are a little bit on the wealthier side. It is really unusual for 2 women to be running the household. No spouses, no children, no grandkids. Nothing is mentioned. But it is really unique, too, because Lazarus is never recorded saying one thing. Nothing is written about him except his presence. He's not given any characteristics. He doesn't have a conversation with Jesus. I mean, it is just crazy. And this is the only place in Scripture this miracle is listed as a reminder. So there's this mystery involved with this family and with him. And they believed that he didn't live with Mary and Martha because Martha's the head of that household. And if he was there, he would be considered that he may have had a family because nothing is listed about him, lived somewhere else. And these women lived there on their own. So it's just kind of, they're not a typical Middle Eastern family of the time. There's other things there. And so obviously they're well loved. People respect them. They have a good standing in the community. There's a lovely sweetness of familiarity as Jesus talks with Martha. They know one another. He gets her personality. Her and Mary are not the same people at all. So he gets her and she comes in. He's like, and I'm assuming, I can't assume that. In my understanding of life, being an American woman, and this would be my pastor, there would have been an embrace. I don't think there was because it wasn't listed, and I don't think it was culturally appropriate. I don't think he would touch her per se, but especially in public like that. But there was this amazing conversation of sweetness, of, do you trust me, Martha? You have ministered to me, you have ministered with me, you have been part of my inner circle of life. You are my family. Do you trust what is going to happen? Can you have this much faith? And Martha was trying, she really was. And I love this because Jesus challenged her little piece by little piece by little piece. I'm here now, Martha. Have faith. Have that same faith you wanted on day 1, the same faith you wanted on day 2, that same faith that was screaming by day 3. Now is day 4 when it's hopeless. Don't lose that same faith.
It's interesting that the term here that I know that he will rise again on the resurrection of the last days. So obviously that teaching has already taken place and she understands it and accepts it completely. Which
Yes.
I thought, because
Yes.
usually I've always had that in my mind, well, that's a little farther down the line in Revelation, something like that, where
Yeah.
this was completely...
Yes. He was very,
fact.
they understood that this is what was going to be happening.
Right.
And it was argued in Jewish communities whether there was a resurrection of the saints or not. Resurrection of the dead was an arguing point between the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Pharisees saying yes, the Sadducees saying no. And so it was a common, maybe, would you say, Pastor Robin, maybe a common conversation? Because they had two sects that were fighting against, each other. So people had to know, here they go again. So Jesus teaching and letting Martha know that that is really true. And honey, you're going to see evidence of it in a few minutes. But he didn't say that. But I wonder if she looked in his face and was like, Jesus, you're freaking me out. What are you up to? Now that you're here, I realize something's happening. And that's why I think she went to meet him, where her sister could not even get to that point. So an understanding of who Jesus is and what he's supposed to do, Martha is trying for that. I think Mary had a really weird relationship. Again, just like John, the disciple, Mary had a really weird relationship, I think, with Jesus, because she appeared to see into the direction he was going and not just the here and now, where Martha dealt a lot with here and now.
Well, and I wonder too, Pastor Arlene, because early in the story, we are told in the first segment, I believe, that this is the Mary, right, who
Yes.
poured out the anointing oil.
Yes.
So Mary had this other interaction with Jesus in a situation where he was really protective of her and her reputation, and he interceded for her with these group of people who were looking to classify her negatively. Don't you know what type of woman this is? So it makes me wonder.
That may
Is
be
that
that may be a different story that
Maybe.
happened much earlier, where they
okay.
think she may have gotten the inspiration to do this, because it's coming up in chapter 12, but John
Okay.
does mention it at the beginning of 11. So
Mm-hmm.
this had happened here. So timeline-wise, it appears that they knew about it here.
Mm.
And what it means to me, from what I've heard, and I remember hearing it being spoken. I haven't found the commentary that offers the support, but that it was really costly, the oil that she used. And they believe that it was embalming oil, what was used back then, not embalming as we know it, but the burial oil, which was very expensive. And you would buy a little bit at a time, and you would put it in the jar that she had. That's what they're thinking it is, because that jar was used to contain that specific oil. And you would buy a little at a time. And the fact that she would have one and use it, have a full one at her age or whatever, they're wondering if that's another sign that they were a little bit on the wealthier side or very wealthy, because either you were wealthy or you were destitute in that society, from what I understand. And that she used that, because Jesus even says in John 12 that she's anointing me for my death. I believe it's somewhere in there,
Yeah, I remember that.
because it's right at the beginning of John 12. And so Mary has this creepy, I would use the phrase prophetic relationship, understanding where Jesus is going and taking them. Knowing ahead of time, I believe she had a very fluid prayer life. She's the one who just couldn't get enough of sitting at his feet and understanding. Things were connecting. Jesus connected all these things that she sort of knew growing up, and now he's putting all these puzzle pieces together. And I believe she's seen. So watching this happen and knowing that Jesus could be now, all of this is interwoven in their lives, because he's their friend. He's lived it. They have all these clues coming up to this point. He's part of Lazarus's life as well as Lazarus's death. The mourning here, especially for Mary, because she didn't make it out to this first encounter. This is just Martha. Martha goes and gets her sister again. But it's interesting because Jesus, just like he revealed himself to Peter in Mark 8, who do you say that I am? He's basically doing that here with Martha, which is a beautiful view of seeing Jesus' relationship with women and how he treated them. This was not to happen. You were not supposed to do this. She is not a member of his family. But knowing he's treating her as she is one. And so watching this lovely interaction as a female and seeing how Jesus actually was probably the very first person to champion women's rights, this idea of, here, I'm doing it by the way I treat you.
Wonder why it specifically mentions that when Jesus came, Martha went out,
Yes.
but Mary remained seated and the house didn't go.
Yep.
There's a reason for that.
Yes, there
which-
is. We're getting this picture here in our head about,
Yeah.
the grief, who knows what, who's feeling what.
Maybe upset. Why didn't you come 4 days ago? He smells now. It's not good. It's not good. Yeah, that's. But
Disappointed
specifically
with
mentioned there
God.
for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah, disappointment.
Maybe
with-
disappointed
Yeah,
with,
yeah.
maybe disappointed. Pastor O, in your notes, you highlight you mentioned Luke 10:38. Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. Right?
Yes.
And that just really struck me about this woman, Martha, and her sister Mary. Why was it when Jesus came into the village that it was a woman who welcomed them into her home instead of a gentleman in that area welcoming them into their home? It made me wonder, did Mary and Martha's parents maybe pass away and they were the matriarchs of the
Yes.
family? And so it's interesting that in that culture, I wonder what was going on, because culturally acceptable for this pair of women to invite these traveling strangers, maybe at that point, from the village square into their home. And so I thought it was interesting that it wasn't a man who had welcomed them into their home, that Mary and Martha got that privilege.
And obviously Lazarus was not part of that home, or he would have been the one
Correct.
going out to
Yep.
invite him in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
would have
came
been
to the
mentioned.
party, but he wasn't the. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
And they're standing in community. Maybe they were the wealthiest people in town. Maybe they were the ones that they knew this was their duty. This is how they used the blessing of the things that they had.
Well, and I think about that when we were going through the parable of the unjust judge. The woman, the old woman who is faithfully, coming again and again, her discipline, her persistence, and we learned, culturally speaking, that she wasn't run off. She was treated with respect. She was using what power she knew. And so here we have these women and, opening up their home and inviting these people into it. And we don't see or hear that there was any difficulty within the local community for these two crazy women inviting strangers into their home, and how inappropriate. We get no indication of inappropriateness at all that they invited him into their life. So it's interesting, the whole relationship picture you're highlighting for us.
Yes.
Yeah, also to kind of show that they must have had wealth, because they didn't go to tell Jesus. They sent probably their own servants.
Yes.
You think that's...
I think so too.
Yeah.
It is fun trying to look at it through the eyes of when it was written. It's one of the bigger mistakes I think we make in life with everything, even all of this unrest going on in America right now. We're trying to look at our past through current day lens. And it's helpful, but it doesn't do any good if we don't have compassion and understanding that they didn't have this current day lens. They didn't have the ability to look at it the way we do because of what society and the pressure and understanding and the normal. Doesn't mean it was right, but it was their normal.
Right.
That conversation needs to continually happen. This is what it looked like back in their time. It was not considered the atrocity we consider it here. This is what it looked like back in their time. It was an atrocity, but it was hidden. And those who wanted to stand up against it couldn't do it this way, but they could do it this way. So that type of stuff. So here we have Jesus helping a new normal happen by the relationship he's having with this family. Now we're into verse 28. John 11:28, Jesus weeps. I loved this piece. Get ready to learn something new. I told them that last night because there's just some. Alrighty, here we go. When she had said this, talking about Martha, she went and called her sister Mary, saying in private, probably hoping Mary could sneak out the back door and have a little conversation with Jesus, just like Martha did. The teacher is here and is calling you. And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. So Mary was there, grieving, up and out the door. Now Jesus had not yet come into the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there, which was very normal. Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she didn't talk to him. She just fell at his feet. An act of worship, an act of understanding. This was her saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come with her were also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled. And he said, where have you laid him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. Here's where it states that Jesus wept, just like that. So the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying? So there is this portion of Scripture explaining about Jesus weeping and what that was. So, okay, I turned the wrong page. Does Jesus know that he is going to be asking Lazarus to walk out of a tomb? I'm thinking he does.
Yeah.
He's setting up, he's preparing people's hearts for Pastor Robin.
Talk about what are we doing today, Jesus?
What's on the agenda? Well, we're going to raise the dead today.
You know, you're having your breakfast of hummus and, you know, all kinds of wonderful fresh veggies. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, guess what, gang? This is what we're doing today. And they don't know. I mean, he didn't do that, of course. But
Correct.
It's like, oh, my goodness. In the course of an ordinary day, Jesus wakes up and go, okay, this is what we're doing today, Dad. I mean, so fascinating.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And not everybody is buying it. We're here in the story, and we see that those are like, oh, he loved him. It's like, well, if I loved him, I'm going to let him die. I mean, Jesus doesn't win either way. No matter what he does, there's going to be this judgment, just like there is today about how anything gets accomplished. There's those who want it this way, those who want it this way, those who don't like. And there's going to be those who do not like what Jesus is about to do, because it doesn't work in their world. We are so good in our human nature. This is not a compliment of formulating what's around us to match our personality so we don't have to deal with the things we don't like. And Jesus is saying, it doesn't matter if you like this or not. This is the way it goes. You have to deal with this process.
Well, and Pastor O, it's interesting to me in the Scripture, what they're saying is they've already defined what they think God's power would look like in this circumstance, and he's already failed us. I mean,
Yes.
if this would have been God, he would have kept him from dying.
Yes.
Oh, interesting, you put God in a box. So if you're God, it has to look like this. Oh my goodness, we do this all the time. You know, and not intentionally necessarily, but yeah, he would have been God if he would have kept him from dying. And God's like, oh, no. Hold on a minute.
Yes.
I have
Yes.
a bigger thing in store
Yes.
for everyone here. So,
Yes. And that process, living in church life and church community, since I was a baby, this idea of, it is amazing how we actually attack one another because we want God to be like this and we want God to be like that. And it's like, wait a minute, you don't, it is so silly. It is such a silly argument. So here Jesus is saying, all right, obedience. Who he's concerned about is his disciples because he knows they need to get it. I want you guys to see this. I want you to watch what's going to happen. So it's amazing his conversation with Mary, the experience there is so different. He is so moved by her sorrow. That's what we're thinking. And so this interesting thing that he says here, that he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled in verse 33. We're not talking about this whole compassion, the ache of watching people. I mean, he had that capability as a human being. But what that word means is, if it's not used inside the Bible, if it's used in other literature of the time, it's talking about the snorting of horses. The idea when the horses get together and they go, that kind of frustration, that snorting. And I know, Sandy, I'm sorry. I am not doing as good a job as you would do. Because I just love you who love horses, all right? And so, strange use of word, John. Mm-hmm. What in the world are you talking about? So what does it mean when it's applied to a human being that's unsettled? And they say it is a sort of anger. He is angry. Other words that could be used as an outburst of anger. It's like, no! Well, you can't help yourself when something happens and that outburst happens, or to attempt to process it or interpret it as an internal emotional upset caused by grief is not accurate at all. Jesus became angry in his spirit is more accurate, or Jesus was outraged in spirit. He was mad. You can use a different word than mad because he was more than mad. There's another word that works really well there. So he was just...
I looked it up and saw lots of words. One was perturbed, which...
Perturbed, yeah.
Very upset.
Very upset.
Then I didn't realize there were so many different versions of the Bible. I did the study. There's dozens. I'm going, what in the world? A lot of them, said he was moved and stuff like that, but many of them groaned in the spirit. Another one, troubled in the spirit. Another one, enraged
Ooh.
in the spirit. Another one, deeply upset. So it's like, yeah, there's a lot more to this than moved.
Right.
I personally, I think it was a combination of everything. The people being upset, him going like, did this have to happen? Well, yes, it had to happen because I had to reveal myself, and maybe because he didn't know it was going to happen until 4 days earlier. I'm not really sure, but obviously he was very upset. There's no doubt about that.
I'm glad that you looked through that and seen all the different versions and how they treat this, because this is how we study Scripture to understand. We did not live in this time. We are looking through our lens back to try to understand this, and this is why we use study Bibles and commentaries and talk about, could be this, it could be that. We know it's in this direction. We know he raised Lazarus from the dead, and it's a sign of his power, his divine power. But how he approached this, I'm going with ticked off. Ticked off at what? I would say ticked off at death and what it does in this understanding, because he is facing it himself. He knows it's coming. I believe part of the reason why he was where he was in 2 days away from Bethany, where he was stationed at the time, is he was preparing himself spiritually and emotionally and physically for knowing what was coming up with the Passover. This would be his last Passover that would lead to his death, burial, and then eventual resurrection. So he was preparing himself for that. But knowing this is going to happen right before that, so now he's there, and so there's all of that, and he's just angry, understanding what death does to humanity, and this is his job. He knows this is his job. I'm going to be victorious over death, but it's not going to happen easily. It's going to be painful and hard, and no one's going to like it. No one's going to like this process.
And that's where why is Jesus so mad, is where my mind parked. What in the world has got him going? And exactly what you just described. But I don't know, I wonder, this is not just the episode that Jesus finds himself in. This is ancient. I mean, does this anger go back to the garden and see the enemy slithering in and trying to, open that door and begin a process that he knows is about to culminate? And is he experiencing and seeing the ancient pain, the killing, stealing, and destroying that the enemy has wrought, that door opened way back there in the Garden of Eden, and all of the stealing, killing, and destroying that happened throughout the course of time that was never intended for these people that God loves so much. We were never designed to hold this pain or to experience this kind of thing. And so here he is as a result of all of that. So I just wondered, is this ancient pain, ancient anger crying out with the magnitude of the price that people have paid over the course of time?
Preach it.
I know.
Yeah. I love hanging out with you two. The things that just pop in your head after just having your long-term relationship with Jesus and long-term relationship with reading Scripture and living in church community, and the things that we have garnered together. And we didn't grow up in church together. We've come here and have grown together here, but all bringing a history of church and personal relationship with Jesus growth when we met. And I just love hearing that popcorning that happens when we get together. I love it. That had to be a part of it. I'm voting yes. That was in there. Yes. Auto votes too.
That's right.
So here we go to the point of the story that John is trying to tell us about, this sign where Jesus raises Lazarus, verses 38 through 44.
Okay, just make one more statement on the very
bet.
end of it there.
Yes.
Just, I really like to visualize being there and say, sometimes, what do they wear? Sandals, whatever, and stuff like that. But just the last line there, these people, some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying?" I would just love to see their face 5 minutes later when Lazarus is walking. Well, yes. I guess he could have if that had to be, it's like, why couldn't he have done this? See, he can't do anything. And 5 minutes later, here comes Lazarus, dancing out like you did last night. There was
I did a Lazarus dance. Yes, I did.
Tied together,
yes.
bound or whatever it is.
Yes. That is true. Watching their face, the camera would have had a close-up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of the face, especially hearing them whisper to one another. Well, if you really loved them, that personality, that person, that immature person who just has to say that. So here we go at verse 38. Thank you, Steve. for sharing that. Alrighty. Then Jesus, deeply moved again, kind of marching to the tomb with the clothes, walking up. It's like, we're battling. This is in battle mode, and he's going to be battling through the death, burial, and resurrection. His mindset was started here. It was a cave and a I think he kind of barked it. They watched him walk in authority. Take away that stone in the mind. It's like, oh, Jesus, wait a minute, Jesus. By this time, he stinks. Okay, it's the 4 days. He's decaying. Please don't. We're all going to puke if you do. And I honestly don't want to see his body looking like that. I mean, in her head. And Jesus looked at her. Sweetheart, that's my version. Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? And in that moment, she's like, Jesus is telling me to quit trying to control the situation.
Or did he say, did I not tell you that if you believe, you would see the glory of God?
Could have, especially with that thing. It's like, come on, Martha, I'm challenging you again. Yep. Because they had the relationship to be blunt and honest with one another, it appeared, yes. You do a good Jesus, Otto, just letting you know.
Ooh.
So they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, so this is interesting. This is all, as John is letting us know, for teaching and training of the crowd. Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this on account of the people standing around, that they may believe that you sent me, that I am the Messiah. When he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come! Here, come out. I mean, I'm trying to think of what would be the one, Lazarus, now! Because Lazarus was already in Abraham's bosom, whatever his spirit had to come back in his body. His body was, in my opinion, already doing its thing. I don't think Lazarus was in a special holding mode that there was, because they would check on him. They would see that he was dead. Day 1, day 2, day 3, his body was. So they knew it was decomposing. So Martha's utterance was just a summation of the things she's already seen. It's like, Lord, I have seen it. His body's gone. Please don't. Because that's all the understanding that she really had. I mean, this is too big for her even to wrap her head around. And Mary's in her freak out. I understand that this is going to be messy. This is going to be something else. I'm just running after him and hanging onto the tail of his coat, and I'm just going to see what he's going to do. So he yells for him to come out of there. And the man who died came out, waddling like a duck, because his feet and hands are tied together, and he has a scarf thing over his face, so I don't think he can really see through the thing. You know, it's not like they cut out little boo eye holes, because he had no reason to see. So Lazarus is trying to come out of there, you know. Okay, he's laying on a bench thing. He's in this tomb, all right, made for this, and he's laying there, and they were wealthier people, so it was probably a rather nice one, and and I mean, imagine how did it feel for him? And where was he? Because your spirit doesn't die. Your spirit was, and his spirit comes back, and the body gets whatever, and I'm sure it happens, you know, in the single, I mean, he was resurrected from the dead. He was matched back together, that thing that is talked about in 1 Thessalonians, which I'll mention at the end of today's podcast, which I know is a long one, but we knew it would be, because it's the entire chapter of John 11. Whenever we're in the Gospel of John, it's going to be a long one, because he tells us so much with so few words. So here, all of this is coming, and here comes Lazarus walking out of the tomb, waddling like a duck with his hands and feet bound, not being able to see. And Jesus, everybody has to be there, because everyone's frozen. And he says, would someone please unbind the dude so he can, someone help him get out of his burial?
Think about the crowd. They had a dead man walking. I mean,
Yes,
they had to just, when he said this, when he hollered this, Lazarus, come out. I bet you could have heard a pin drop. Everybody just, but nothing's happening. All of a sudden, there he is. And you go, what? I'd lose it.
Yes. Well, I'm assuming Martha and Mary had a hysterical response, which they should have, according to
on
their
the ground.
personal experiences. And so Yeah.
Well, and I think about, this is an agrarian society. So they're accustomed to growing their vegetables and raising their own animals and, foxes and eagles and all that kind of stuff. Otto raises chickens and Pastor O, you have too. So, the number that you have when you go to bed at night is not necessarily the number that you have when you wake up in the morning. And so they are more familiar, pardon me, in a daily sense of life and death than I think we are as a culture. And they understand that the processes that happen with death. So the blood has not been let. I mean, I don't mean to be gross, but it's pooled in the body. The natural processes of death have already happened for these 3 days. And so in that second, they know life is in the blood. The blood had to be innervated again, brought back to life again and coursed through the body again. And it completely defies anything that's ever happened in the world before. It defies logic, it defies physics, it defies biomechanics. I mean, this can't happen. And yet here's Jesus doing it.
Here's the shocker of all shocks.
Shocker of all shockers. It's like the world starts rotating in a completely opposite direction and the sky is green and the grass is blue. I mean, everything changed in that moment.
And it doesn't say that, well, it says he raised him.
Yep.
But it doesn't say that, I'm sure when he was raised, he was completely cured and regenerated and they had another 20, 30 years to go.
Yes, I have not looked for nor seen what history says what happened to Lazarus, where he went, because nothing is written about him. He never speaks. I mean, he's just there in name and being. It's like he's the walking billboard, but has no words of his own. And we find out later in the next section of Scripture that they are planning to kill him as well when we get into, I think, John 12, because he is a screaming Instagram that won't go away, that keeps being puked up and retweeted and repassed around. And this idea that I was there, I seen this, or it's a video that keeps, that viral that won't quit making the circuit. So that's who he was. And there wasn't any way to get rid of that. You can't delete a human being unless you kill him. So his name came up after their plot, which is listed in the bottom half here of the end of John 11. So here we have Jesus once again making this statement that everybody in this crowd needs to know that this is a miracle of God the Father, that he is doing this through me because we are one. There is no my ministry in Jesus' dialogue, in his mindset or in his life. It's all about honoring God the Father. I love this. It's so intertwined. It's all about his glory. It has nothing to do with mine. I mean, any glory that I get will be given to me by God the Father, which we find out in the rest of the New Testament how that goes. But right here, he is defining a mindset for us. When we ask for these things, it's like, God, show yourself. God, do your thing. We do the ministry of Jesus. We don't do our ministry. That's just not a phrase we use. This is our training. This was the disciples' little primer about, all right, this is how you ask for it. It is your power, God. Do your thing. I know you hear the prayers that I am praying, but it is by your power and for your glory that this be done. Lazarus, get your hiney out of there and let people see what God can do. Because without this sign, the resurrection would not have been taken for what it was. It had to happen before it. So I know Jesus knew things, man. He had to have some type of strip going through his head, knowing what's coming, his timeline, this understanding of where and when. So he knew how this had to play out, because without this, what was coming next, he could gain comfort, if you can gain comfort in a horrible mutilation that he was about to face, but comfort knowing it is the crowning piece. Life will never be the same again for anyone after what I'm going through. And so people just had to be gasping and screaming and having this, and who knows, I mean, the melee, the people running to go get people to come touch Lazarus. People, because there was, the cell phone, this wasn't as available, you got to see this. The only way they can see this, I mean, Mary and Martha's house in this place had to be just inundated with people everywhere coming to see the walking sign that Jesus is the Messiah, known as Lazarus.
Well, and adding to that, Pastor O, or right along with that, exactly what you're talking about, because in this episode, you cannot argue with the fact that Jesus and the Father are one, that the power of the Father for resurrection from the dead flows through Jesus. That is intertwined now in a way that can never be untwined, whatever that word is.
Yes.
And then we know, they don't know yet, but we know the resurrection is coming and everything
Yes.
that Jesus had to go through. And so even in that circumstance, so you have Lazarus, and Lazarus is dead, and that power has never worked through a human being before, and Jesus blows that away. I am the Son of God. So here he is at his own resurrection, and he's going to look as powerless as anybody ever could. The power of God cannot function through a dead body, right? Because I'm not here to speak the words, resurrect me. And God the Father blows that right out of the water. And so it's like what you're talking about, the sequence of things that needed to happen, and each one continually pulls away the wrong mindset or the wrong thinking of, this is why you can't be God. Oh, really? This is why you can't be God. Oh, really? And he just keeps showing how he is God.
And we still do that same thinking today. Mm-hmm. That no, it can't be. It has to be like this. Mm-hmm. I mean, it is amazing to watch. The human mindset hasn't changed a whole lot. The last few verses here in John 11. Are we ready to move to the end? All righty. John 11 verses 45 through 57 will make your heart rip open. Just looking at humanity and this is why we need the salvation of Christ. We need to understand that our self-love and self-preservation can get us into huge trouble because it helps us not love others. We want to take care and be self-centered and glorify ourselves over others. So many of the Jews believed this idea. Many of the Jews, when John uses that phrase, he's talking about the whole populace. And they believed in Christ as the Messiah because of what happened there. And then verse 46, but you think is I got to go tell the authorities. They're going to want to know. I don't know if they were promised money. I don't know what the motivation was, human nature, but they see the dead man rise. They watched him get unbound, and the first thing they think is I got to go tell the authorities. And so here the factions are splitting, those that are going to believe in Jesus as the Messiah and those that are going to want him dead because his very existence challenges their status quo. And Caiaphas is listed in this portion of Scripture giving a prophetic word that I do not believe he understood. And he's talking about it. Hey, come on, guys, don't fret and panic about this guy because he's not going to upset the Roman authorities, and he's not going to have the power to take away our temple because we're going to make sure that he gets taken out. Better that one man die, that our entire populace be punished for his self-glorification. I mean, the crazy things that were going on, and the only thing that this crew could think of was self-preservation of a system that they carefully cultivated and guided for over 400 years, that they've inherited to care for, pointing to an event like this, but they're missing the whole event because they want to stay in power and in control. And Caiaphas makes this statement. It's interesting to note that he very likely was in the temple when Jesus was on the cross and when the earth quaked and things. And the question is, did he see the temple curtain all on its own be torn to, not from bottom to top, but from top to bottom, being ripped open? At that moment, did Caiaphas realize and start lining up some of those prophetic things said in the Old Testament that I have been a part but on the wrong side of this? Mm-hmm. Who knows? But that individual is in this portion of Scripture. John has him listed, that he was going to help orchestrate to make sure that Jesus would pay the price for this. They weren't going to pay it. Mm-hmm. They didn't want theirs, and unfortunately, their system imploded anyway because they were wrong about how it would work. And so that human motivation to, I can fix this because this has to stay the same. There is no, I can handle this. We need the help of God to handle life here on this planet. And this whole story in John 11 tells us that without his power, you're not going to make it. You're going to end up just making things up for yourself, self-preservation, when you could have this amazing experience of being in community, celebrating the works of Christ. But you do have to do one thing. You have to believe in Christ. You have to believe that Jesus is God. Without that, you're not going to be able to see this. You're going to be out here trying to, oh no, it's this, oh no, it's this, oh no, it's this. And it does sound wacky at times, and it feels surreal because it's coming from the supernatural. You have to get used to the idea that you have a supernatural being that is going to be part of for eternity. It came from eternity and it stays in eternity. And it is you. It's not absorbing into a microcosm of beauty. No, it's you. And Jesus showing through his death, burial, and resurrection, that's our future. That's our future. We are going to have that happen to us. And so all of this is setting the stepping stones for what's going to be happening in a few short days, I believe, after this was done.
And Pastor O, one of the things I think about too with all of them running to the authorities had trained them, if you're looking for a frame for reality, you got to come to us.
Yes.
We are
Yes.
going to be the ones,
Yes.
we will
Good
tell you
point.
what
Good point.
reality is. And so here they've got these people running to the authorities. Are they looking for what is truth? How does this all fit together? And just like you talk about being on the wrong side, the lesson I take from this, one of them, is am I going to the proper authority to define my reality? And that is the Word of God. That's what we define our reality on, not necessarily what our leaders say, unless it lines up with Scripture. I mean, as Christians, we need to know what anchors us and where to find the truth and who will help us with that.
So you mean I can't get my reality off the internet and all these amazing videos on YouTube?
It's on Facebook.
I got to tell you, if the person has not invested in a community where you know they love others, you shouldn't listen to them. It's my personal litmus test. If I don't know them and that they have invested in a community where I know they know how to love other people, I will not listen to them because they haven't proven that they really care. They're all about themselves. I don't have time. There's so much work to be done, caring for other people and loving others and building and creating healthy community. You don't have time. It's like if they can't do that, what they say is twisted. It doesn't have true foundation or truth. Another conversation. Feel a little bit, motivated by that. So here we go. All of that, we covered that in 40-some minutes last night. All right, it's taken us a bit longer here because we're a little bit more verbose on chewing this because we're chewing on this amazing experience that John has listed right here. This is it. Lazarus still hasn't said anything, but he set the world on fire. So the question came out. This was in the group asked for the small group. What does the story of Lazarus teach us about God's delays, about God's timing? Quoting Romans 8:28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. That was not written at this time. So, asking people, what does it teach us? So in your groups, in your thoughts, anybody have anything they want to add, what they heard, what were people struggling with? It didn't seem, I'm not sure which question or if people morphed into a different question. I'm not sure if that question grabbed everyone as quickly as I thought it would, because the timing in this story just rings my bells. It's like, do not panic. Do not panic. God is in control, even though it really looks like he can't handle what's happening.
Good one. It was probably the first comment. It was fantastic. It was God's timing can be frustrating to us. And
Just a wee bit.
I think so.
Yes, and amen.
Yeah, but just sit and wait.
And not seeing that as a problem. Being frustrated is not a problem. It just means I don't get everything yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me a space, give me some time. Give me 4 days.
Yeah, give me 4 days. Give me 4 days. Let's wait till it's dead and stinking, and then he'll. Now, I wonder. It has caused in me a pause to want to say something is delayed, because it's delayed from my frame, but he holds the frame, and
Yes.
so for him, it's not delayed. It's just the right time.
Yes.
And so it makes, I'm challenging myself to relax into the timing of God instead of, imposing what I think is a delay. Because if he doesn't answer immediately, he answers eventually. And so, yeah, the whole delayed timing thing, it's almost in a sense like I'm casting judgment on God. Come on.
Yeah, if he would have really loved him, he would have healed him. That kind of mindset,
so it's reframed when things take longer than I expect them to. I realize, okay, I need to readjust my expectations because I know the Father isn't wrong. I know this is going to roll out in His perfect timing. My responsibility is to pray and to be ready and to be obedient to what's in front of me. What am I supposed to do when it looks like He's delayed? So,
It should set off that switch in us. God is up to something good. Oh, God, you're up to something good. It's taken time. I'm starting to smell the decay. You got to be up to something good. The two things that come out of this for me is that this timing thing is inevitable. Our desire for the timeline and His desire for a timeline, it's inevitable they're going to clash, but Jesus is really, really good. It's part of His job description, holding timelines. So this is His personal mastery. He's got a PhD in timeline handling. And so God's up to something good. And remembering this is not heaven, one of my other favorite by phrases or whatever, this idea, this is not heaven. So we're looking at supernatural and natural mixed together, that God is up to something good. It's inevitable. They're going to happen because I do like things my way because I'm human. And, all right? But the things that I see are not final. We may think this is final. It's like, well, maybe it looks final in the natural. But in God's timing, in God's frame, like you were saying, Pastor Robin, He has that in mind. So the best thing I can think of is we're on a roll. I love roller coasters. We're on a roller coaster ride of life. Oh, sorry, Ada, we'll have to go on the tilt together.
that'll be you on that by
Spinning.
yourself.
Woo!
Yeah.
I love that. Whoa, and the feeling of, oh, and it's like, okay. And your body lifts up. It's like a crazy. And it's a roller coaster ride. We're going somewhere. Sometimes it's that descent. Oh, please, help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus. Whoosh. All right, here we go. Looks like we're going there. And then whoosh, over there. All right, that hurt. I don't know if I want to go this direction. Whoosh. Okay, now we're going over there. That's more than a roller coaster. That's the one at Valley Fair that swiggles like that, whatever that one is.
And I'm thinking, whoosh, I just threw up there.
That's right. Yeah, you might
That's
puke
okay.
a few things. That's right. We're going to puke in this thing at Life of Faith. And so, but really utilizing this example. We had a visitor, we told him to go away, even though he's really cute. Really utilizing this example of this is it. This is what life is going to look like, matching our timeline to what Mary and Martha were thinking, and even Lazarus being called back from the dead. Seriously? That's a different conversation. I know we're getting almost an hour and a half. Who in the world talks this much, you two? What's wrong
Scripture
with
is
us?
so exciting.
Because we're not done yet.
Yeah.
Because then we have this question when Thomas, the Doubting Thomas guy, before he got the name Doubting Thomas, he says, well, all right, saddle up the horses, fellas. We're going with him that we may die with him. I mean, he wasn't just we are going to die. So let's just go, be part of it, because I'm not staying here. As long as that dude's got a body and as long as he's alive, I'm along. I have made the commitment until he's dead. And I'm assuming Jesus, it's so close to his death, burial, and resurrection, has spoken with them about what he expects from them afterwards. He had to have. I mean, he's a good trainer, all those training skills, training a human being to think supernaturally and naturally, that, okay, we're going and it looks like this could be the thing. So if that is a mindset of the disciples at the time, what does that look like today? We're human beings and we have frustrations and we go through things that are really hard. What is that mindset as, okay, I'm just going to lay down my life here because I'm going where Jesus is going? How does that sentiment apply to our life today? Where do we lay down our life? Did anybody hear, or I'm not sure if I was clear enough with the question I put up on the Trons last night, because I could tell people needed a little more than what I had put.
One of the comments there was that in an instant, everything can change.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know when the timing of that instant in your life is going to happen. But there are going to be instances in your life when everything changes. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do with that change? How are you going to handle it? Because by change, I mean a big change. Death, financial, whatever.
Yep,
But
health,
in an instant,
yep.
all of a sudden, everything is different.
Yep.
Lazarus was dead. An instant later, he's up and walking and not talking, apparently. But
Well, we know he talked. Nobody ever recorded what he said. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Who is this Lazarus? It's going to be fun meeting him in heaven. It's like, what was up with that?
It makes me realize, when Jesus tells us we need to live ready, we need to live ready. I need to get up in the morning and have my coffee living ready. I need to answer my emails living ready. I need to, love my family and connect with my friends living ready. I need, just this whole of what does living ready every moment look like, because any second of the day things can change.
Yes. Yes. And it's interesting to know as we go through after Jesus' resurrection and we read the rest of the New Testament, it is all after these amazing experiences we're talking about here. So this is creating and cultivating a thing in their mindset and who they are. There is something growing that is needed in the disciples that will carry them through, that we are the direct recipients of. That this is where it's percolating and where it is starting. So what is John communicating about Christ in this miracle? What is John saying the sign of his divinity and his unique mission? What are we supposed to note about Jesus in this miracle that we could put on our list?
copying somebody else there. I can't. It takes me a minute. I'm not too good with this technical stuff here.
Ha, ha, ha. Yeah, you could run a radio station, but no.
Here's the big one, that all things through Christ our Lord are possible. All are possible.
Yes. A faith statement here, that all, and they said underline all a few times. I think I underlined it 3 times or something.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Those.
Yeah. Underline the all. It's like, yes, I can do that because I'm the only one handling the pen these days. So, all right, I can study and I can write with a marker. I'm multi-talented. So there was that. Another one is that I am the resurrection, this idea of focusing on what's going to be coming. He's training them. That resurrection and me are inseparable. That's who I am. So I thought that was really good. Pastor Robin, any thoughts you want to throw at that?
Yeah, the challenge of be careful. You know how we as humans, we try to find patterns, we try to understand what's going on so that we have steady ground under our feet. It helps us feel more comfortable, maybe even lean toward controlling. You know, this whole idea of trying to understand what's going on around me, I always need to remember and factor in that there's a whole lot I may not know. There's supernatural principles in play here as well, and I can entrust me and my circumstances and those involved to the Lord, and He knows exactly what He's doing, and He knows exactly His timing, and it will be good. You know, God works all things together for those who are called according to His purpose. So just to not be too quick to judge, you know, what the circumstance actually means, to hold on and let God do that.
Yes. So as we close, and yes, we are going to close this podcast and this recording, it's like, thank you for joining us, because this has been one of my favorite. I love the Gospel of John. I love reading all that he's written, because there's just the thing. This dude has a different sight about Jesus. And like I said, he took to his grave things that we're going to have to wait. And yes, Autumn and I are going to be first in line when we get up there to ask him these questions. He's like, hey, what about
That's
this?
right.
Come on, tell us a few things. We only got, eternity to chaw this out. But I believe John was after this idea that Jesus has power over life and death. I mean, the smack into everyone's face, because this is what God has power over. And you're looking at him. His name is Jesus. So I would like to ask you, our listening audience and our viewing audience, what defines your reality? What do you allow to define your reality? Otto?
Thank you for joining us for this week's discussion on When Jesus Speaks, Lazarus, Signs from the Gospel of John. To enjoy this process live, come and join us and the Wednesday night crew every Wednesday evening at 6:30 at Maranatha's Forest Lake campus. This is Steve Lundy reminding you to always be kind.